Welcome back to Mason Talks. Now, in spite of incessant hatred and just unstoppable anger from not only the national media, but also our local media here in Cleveland, Ohio, the Browns appear to finally be wrapping up their head coaching search, and it looks like, at least according to the most recent reporting, as of today, January 24th, 2026, that the Browns are zeroing in on Los Angeles Rams pass game coordinator Nate Scheelhaase to be their next head coach. And we'll see if that happens. If it's not Scheelhaase, it'll be Grant Udinski. But this is going to be a head coaching search which wraps up very soon. And the latest reporting comes from Ian Rappaport, who basically said that not only is Nate Scheelhaase a top candidate, which everybody already knew, but also that he appears to be very willing to work with and work alongside current Browns defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz. And listen, I don't think that any of our head coaching candidates should be forced to work with Jim Schwartz. I think that's a stupid way of doing business. However, I do think that Nate Scheelhaase is a fantastic candidate. Probably in all reality, my top candidate. I keep flip-flopping a little bit between him and Grant Udinski, but there's just something about Scheelhaase's experience, not just under Sean McVay, but also under Matt Campbell at Iowa State, that just, sticks out in terms of the ability to build a culture for a football team and build an offensive culture, which obviously the Cleveland Browns are in, desperate need of, to say the least. But, the Browns head coaching search is wrapping up. If I had to predict right now, I think Nate Scheelhaase is going to become the next head coach of the Cleveland Browns. He's set to interview on Monday. However, the timeline of this specifically is all going to be determined by whether or not the Rams lose in the NFC title game tomorrow. If the Rams win, then of course Browns fans are going to have to wait like 2.5 more weeks to get through the Super Bowl, which I do not want to happen. I am rooting aggressively for the Seahawks. We need Sam Darnold to step up and allow us to hire our next head coach, please. But I wanted to briefly talk about how this coaching search has been covered by our local media, by the national media, but specifically the local media, because in the history of this YouTube channel, which stretches back to, Johnny Manziel, 2014, whoever the coach was then, I think it was Mike Pettin, I'm not 1,000,000,000% sure, but we've covered many head coaching searches, and this has been the worst to read about and the worst to, check the news about on Twitter or wherever, because the local Cleveland media, specifically in sports, the sports media of Cleveland, Ohio, is a joke. It's a disaster. It's been dying for years, and it's probably dead now. At least the traditional media, newspaper, writers, radio hosts. I'm sure at least a couple names come to mind specifically when I say that. But the media's coverage of this head coaching search has been horrific. And it's just pure, the dumbest, lowest level of Cleveland Browns discourse, just talking about how stupid Jimmy Haslam is, how bad everything's been in the past, how the fans deserve better, blah, like the dumbest stuff you could talk about without actually doing any critical thinking about how to make the team better. And it's all for, it's for grifters on Twitter. It's for clicks. It's for the commenters on Facebook's, Facebook posts. Like, it's just the lowest level of discourse, and that's all we have. I mean, there was a time when the city of Cleveland had multiple, at least you could say decent, sports talk radio stations, traditional radio stations. You had one on the AM, one on the FM, and you actually had some decent radio coverage in this city, and it's a disaster now. And nobody's doing, well thought out content, well thought out shows. It's all for clicks. It's all to rile up fans and make them as angry as possible and make their fandom of the Browns as depressing as they possibly can. And it's a net negative for everybody involved. And the Browns media, we need to see a seismic shift into something at least a little bit more, intellectually strong. Not just this online grifting to try to get a nice little, 60-second video clip to stir up some conversation on Twitter. It's ridiculous. The Browns get enough crap from the national media, from the people who don't live in Cleveland. There's enough of that garbage coverage that we don't need the local coverage to be even worse. And, looking at how this process has unfolded, nobody at all has given, listen, do I trust Jimmy Haslam? No. I don't trust Jimmy Haslam to make the right decision most of the time, I would say. I'm still deeply fearful that they're going to hire Jim Schwartz as head coach, which would be a disaster. But the coverage of the actual process and how Andrew Berry has been handling this has been, incomprehensible. You look at how the Browns have there was I think it's Tom Pelissaro who had the reporting within the last couple of days about how the Browns have this super intricate candidate, questionnaires and essays and personality tests that they put their coaching candidates through to try to determine who's the right fit. And of course, the media had a field day with it. But if you look at the candidates that Andrew Berry's process has brought up, and I want to be careful with calling it Andrew Berry's process because this is the process that Paul DePodesta used. This is the process that Sashi Brown used when finding coaching candidates. We'll just call it the analytical quote-unquote process, even though I don't really like that term all that much because it's so incredibly vague. But the analytical process that the Browns have used to find good coaching candidates, in 2016, it put Sean McDermott at the top of the pack. In 2019, it put Kevin Stefanski at the top of the pack. In 2020, once again, it was Kevin Stefanski at the top of the pack. And what has stood in the way of this head coaching approach? Well, 2016, it was Jimmy Haslam, who superseded his front office to hire Hugh Jackson. 2019, it was John Dorsey, who decided to hire Freddie Kitchens instead to have as much control over the organization as he could. Of course, both were, subsequently fired very shortly afterwards. 2020, you got Kevin Stefanski, who is your best head coach in decades. A 2-time coach of the year. The coach who took the Browns to the playoffs twice. Won a playoff game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The animosity with which people treat this process, which we don't even know that much about. I mean, we just know anecdotally that the Browns have some personality tests and some, you have to write an essay or whatever. We don't know that much about it, but we do know it's brought forth good candidates in the past. And if you know that it's brought forth good candidates in previous years, then why would you be so afraid of it now? I mean, why are we flipping out that the Browns are doing their due diligence on who's going to be the next head coach of this football team. Like, I mean, you look at how the rest of the league has unfolded. Like, no, the only candidate who Browns fans were interested in, who's been hired thus far, was John Harbaugh. And from the beginning, I mean, that was probably a pipe dream. But, like, I mean, the Ravens hired Jesse Minter. Nobody wanted him. The Steelers today hired Mike McCarthy. Nobody wanted Mike McCarthy. I don't even know why the Steelers wanted Mike McCarthy other than he's a local guy. But, like, your top candidates are still available. Grant Udinski, Nate Scheelhaase. Why are we flipping out that the Browns are doing as much due diligence as physically possible? The other thing that makes me mad is the Rooney Rule and how everybody's like, oh, the Browns haven't, you know. I mean, the Browns are handling the Rooney Rule like it's supposed to be handled. They're bringing in the best minority candidates that they would legitimately be interested in hiring. I mean, this isn't just a, you know, checkbox candidate that the Browns are bringing in. Nate Scheelhaase has a legitimate shot to be the next head coach of the team. So did Mike McDaniel before he backed out of the job, which he also did with, you know, the Buffalo Bills, which I think says more about Mike McDaniel than it does about either the Browns or the Bills franchise. But, like, right now you're a couple weeks in to this process. Your top candidates are still on the board. You're doing as much due diligence as physically possible. Why is our media freaking out and questioning what's going on? Like, what's the issue? The Browns are doing as much research as they can. They want to get the best candidate that they can. And I think it's going to end up being Nate Scheelhaase. Maybe it's Grant Udinski. I am begging Jimmy Haslam that it's not Jim Schwartz. Like, all we should be hoping right now is that Jimmy Haslam lets the process unfold. But this is the one reason why the media stuff makes it really sets me off. I think that Jimmy Haslam pays attention to what the media says, and I think he pays attention to fan sentiment. So when the media pushes for a certain narrative, I think Jimmy Haslam hears it, and I don't know this, I think it impacts the decision making that he puts forward. So when we want the Browns to rush through and get this done before, you know, try to beat the Steelers in a race to get a head coach, try to beat the Ravens in a race to get a head coach, I just think that pushes Jimmy Haslam towards the quickest coach you could hire, who would be Jim Schwartz. I mean, Jim Schwartz is the guy who's been in your building, so, like, that would be the easy move to get the decision quickly. Which is why I think the media are doing a disservice to the entire organization and the fan base and how they're covering this. Let the process unfold. Let the Browns get these guys into the building. Let them interview their top candidates, and they're going to hire Grant Udinski or Nate Scheelhaase. It'll be one of the two. I think it's going to be Scheelhaase. That's who I'm kind of leaning towards now. But, like, can we all just relax a little bit? This has been the dumbest head coaching search narrative I think I've ever witnessed in my fandom of the Cleveland Browns, which is saying a ton. But let me know in the comments. Scheelhaase, Udinski, Schwartz, Munkin. I mean, who do you want to be head coach? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for listening to the Mason Talk Sports show. Please subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. Goodbye.